What is going on, everyone? Chris with Journos, Comics, and Pop Culture. It is that time of the year again. 2021 is almost behind us, and this is the top key comics to invest in for 2022. Two reasons of why I pick these books for this list today. One, I do believe that these books are key books that are going to continue to see increases in fair market value, both for the short term and, of course, for that long term investment. But more importantly, these are actually my 2022 key want list books. So every book on this list are books that I do not own and that I am hoping to hit the check mark off of each of these over the next coming 12 months. Before we get into the books, folks, if you aren't subscribed to the channel, please take some time to do so. Check out all the awesome links below as well, including the link to today's sponsor, the Otis app. I'm going to get into what we're going to be looking at with these books and how we're going to be breaking them down. But before we do so, please just take a couple minutes to check out today's sponsor, the Otis app. Otis is the stock market for culture, an alternative investment app that allows anyone to buy and sell shares of culturally relevant pieces. Weekly drops include a mix of contemporary art, collector's pieces, and pop culture items. What are we here for, folks? Comic books, right? Otis offers a nice line of blue chip key comics. We're actually going to go in and take a look at some of these comics available for you to purchase shares of. As you guys can see here, we got a hot one right now, Special Marvel Edition 15, first appearance of Shang-Chi. We could go into this and see that shares of this book are selling at $31 a share. You can see the 1 month to 3 month market fluctuation of what this book's been doing, trending stats, all kind of details regarding the book and what it's been doing on the market are right there for you to see. We're going to go over to another one. We got Hulk 181, Avengers #1. Let's look at Fantastic Four 52, the first appearance of Black Panther. Now you can see that over the last month, this book's shares actually took a loss. But if you look over the last 3 months, you can see that there's been a substantial gain still. So again, multiple ways for you to earn potential returns on your investments. Another one that I wanted to look at is one that is actually exited slash sold. X-Men #1. Let's look at this book. If you would have invested in shares of this book when it first listed, you would have earned 65%, as it states at the top there, on your initial investment, as this book's shares ended at $123.89 per share. Assets sold on July 23rd of this year. Look at this, $225,479.80, netting investors $123.89 per share, and a 65.19% return from the IPO price. Folks, if you want to get in on assets that a lot of us as collectors might not be able to buy straight out, this is a good way, again, to invest in some of these blue chip key comics, and is a good way to earn potential returns on your investment. So be sure to check out that link in the description below. And when you sign up for Otis with that link in the description, you can get your first share for free when you fund your account. All right, everyone, this is how we are going to break this down. I'm not a stickler for 9.8s all around, so you're going to see different CGC grade fair market values for each of these books. The CGC grade that you see are most likely going to be the ones that had most books on the market for sale. Then we're going to compare the current fair market value with the fair market value from 3 years ago and look at the percent increase or loss on each of those books. And then we're going to be looking at an average raw, which is going to give you all kind of a decent look on what is really affordable there to the average collector. So I'm excited. Let's get into the first book on today's list, and that is Detective Comics 411, the first appearance of Talia al Ghul. Now, the reason I have this book on the list is because I believe that Al Ghuls are amazing characters that ultimately have so much potential. Ra's al Ghul, even his first appearance, has so much potential. That is a book that I don't own, and I could have put that on this list, but I went with something that's a little more in my budget that I also think has maybe even a larger possibility, or a possibility to see a larger percent increase in sales, at least for that short term, maybe within the next 2 or 3 years. Let's look at these numbers. Current CGC 8.0 fair market value sitting at about $450. 2018, it was sitting at 327 roughly. That is a 38% increase. So, one thing that I love about DC books, we all know that Marvel has the MCU, and we all know what the MCU with the movies and the shows in these days have done to Marvel books. DC doesn't need that for their key books, like this one, to continue to increase in value and be essentially, I don't want to call it a blue chip key, but solid, low risk investments, if that makes sense. Average raw, $130. Now, before we go on to the next books, I'm going to break down these fair market values and the averages. For those that know, fair market value is never an exact science, and you guys probably hear me repeat this often. It is a rolling average that's constantly changing, that can change from day to day, week to week. So you always have to take a fair market value with a grain of salt, especially in a collectibles market, especially with comic books, especially with how we've seen comic books act over the last couple of years, right? Now, average raw, again, it doesn't pertain to a specific grade. It's basically all of the recent raw sales, no matter the grade. You take all their prices, you add them up to how many, and you add all the prices up, divide it by how many books sold, and that's your average raw. So what I always like to say is you could find some type of book in a probably somewhere around a mid-grade range, especially for these older Silver Age or Bronze Age book, for roughly around that $130 mark. All right, now let's move on to the next book on the list, and that is Mr. Miracle, #1, first appearance of Mr. Miracle. Kirby Goodness. I believe that as time goes on, Kirby books like this are going to be continually sought after at a higher rate. Let's look at these numbers. Current CGC 9.0, fair market value roughly $417, whereas to 30 years ago it was at $293. That is a 42% increase. Again, when you look at DC books, there's no movie no crazy speculation. These are just solid books that are, low risk investments that continue to move and increase in value. Average raw sitting at about $89. So still, these are some affordable books out there if you're willing to get some in some lower grades. All right. And I want to let everyone know right now, this percent increase, you're going to see that number get higher and higher as we get lower on the list. All right, next book up is Captain Britain, #8, first appearance of Betsy Braddock, who we all know later becomes Psylocke. I'm a huge Psylocke fan. That's why I have it on this list. That's why I want this book. I've wanted it for a long time now. I do not have it. This character is one of my favorite characters. But outside of that, remember, there's other reasons why I picked these books for this list as well. And it also goes to showing you all how I collect, right? So much potential with the Psylocke character. So much potential. I've been saying this ever since we saw Olivia Munn, right? In I don't even want to name the film because it was so bad in my humble opinion. But Psylocke can be done so well in live action, and now with the X-Men, we know they're coming in the MCU. We know that Kevin Feige has stated that he wants the team to look different when they're introduced. I've said this before and I'll say it again as well. I don't think we're going to see the X-Men introduced as a team at first. I think we're going to see random ones pop up. And this is a character that I think can randomly pop up. Psylocke, y'all. I mean it. All right, let's look at these numbers. Current CGC 9.8 fair market value. Wow, $2,222. 2018 sitting at about $1,350. That's a 65% increase with a $400 average raw. I have to put a little asterisk or a little context added to this book. There are so few on the market that these fair market values really have to be taken with a grain of salt. They're there's like, I was looking at other grades. I know we're using a 9.8 here, but I saw recently like a 9.4 sell for, I don't know, and I'm guessing because I don't have the numbers on me, I think maybe around 600, but then you get an average raw sitting at around 400, and that goes to show you there's something going on here. And what I did in my research is I noticed that when you get books that are scarce on the market, and that means there's only a very few at any given time up for sale, the demand for this book probably fluctuates because you might only, if we're only looking at online sales, right? eBay and My Comic Shop and things like that, you may have a different type of demand every time a couple books go up on the market. And sometimes there might be just a couple, all it takes is a couple individuals that really want this book at one point in time, and they're out in a bidding war or something like that. But then you may get a few more added a few months down the line, and maybe those few that were like really itching to have this book already have it, and now the other few that are really having their eyes on it aren't really that aggressive in the market on it. So that's kind of what I'm seeing with this book. If you were in the market to buy this book, I would be very, very careful and cautious when purchasing this book. I always say you want to have patience, because having patience, sometimes you may miss out, but it pays off more in the long run. And here's my fair warning, as I say in all of my videos like this, I am not here to tell you guys to buy anything, invest in anything. I'm here to give you my personal opinion on these books with some data and some facts sprinkled in. And of course, you utilize your best judgment when making purchasing decisions. You got to love the books. You got to be willing to take the risks, right? All right, moving on. Next book on the list is Uncanny X-Men 133, the first solo Wolverine story. This book has been decently hot as of late. I am all about the Wolverine books right now. For years now, I've been talking about Wolverine Limited Series #1, which I did obtain. I've told this story a few times on my channel. I obtained it at a time where I thought I overpaid. I paid like $60 for a raw copy. It was a higher grade. And I sent it to CGC and it came back at 9.6. And now I haven't checked, but I know the 9.6 did break $500. I don't know exactly where it's sitting at right now. So did I overpay? Absolutely not. That goes to show you what these Wolverine books are doing. And I have been advocating for those that get priced out of the Hulk 181. Even the Hulk 180s now, or the giant size X-Men #1s. You got to go for those next best things. And Wolverine #1 limited series was that next best thing. And now after that, what's the next best up? This book right here, Uncanny X-Men 133, as well as the Volume 2 ongoing Wolverine #1 series. I've had that on a few lists as well. So Wolverine is that iconic character that has all of these, really solid early key books. And this is definitely one to look out for. Numbers, current CGC 9.6 fair market value, sitting at about $295. 3 years ago, $145. So this book is basically doubled in value, 103% increase. That is absolutely solid. Average raw sitting at about $77. I had a couple opportunities to jump on this book, and this is one of those situations where I probably procrastinated and my patience came back to bite me in the butt. But that's okay, because like I said, more often than not, patience wins out. And I'll own this book. I will. One day soon. Next up, folks, this is another one that I had an opportunity to get, but this is where patience, I think, is going to win out for me. Daredevil 168, the first appearance of Elektra. I just think Elektra is an underrated character. It's always kind of boggled me how lower her key books are on the market next to some other comparative figures, and that's changed. I think in the COVID market, that's changed. We've really utilized, a lot of people say, oh, the COVID market is just people with extra money blowing old. Put that aside. I'm not getting into that argument right now. But the one thing that the COVID age has done, it's brought in a lot more people to social media. And a lot more collectors have been able to find tools and find information instantaneously. And I think with this happening, we become more privy to a lot of these key books that are out there. And then we're like, oh, well, I want that one and I want that one. And I think Elektra is finally be getting more love because of that. So let's look at these numbers. Current CGC 9.4 fair market value sitting at about $616, whereas to 3 years ago, $284. That is a 170% increase. So it's more than double, with the average raw sitting roughly around $99. So again, you see what this book's been doing on the market. I really like, I'm all about low grade books as long as they present well, folks. And I think for most of these books on my list, if I am to buy them out there on the secondary market, it really has to be the right one for the right price. And it's kind of like a chess game, and it's a balancing act at the same time. Because when you consider low grade books too, a lot of these have been what Bronze Age books so far as well. There's not necessarily a lot out there. At the same time, well, I want to go for something in the 2.5 to 3.5 range or something. You're not always going to see an abundance of them on the market, even though, there might be a good handful of them on the market, but, they may be 5.0s and 7.0s and 9.0s and so forth. So that's kind of where I'm at. Fingers crossed on this one. All right, we have a few more books to go, folks, but I do want to remind you all, if you are in need of comic book supplies, you can check out bcwsupplies.com and use the code JOURNOS and receive 10% off of your order. That link is below as well. You guys can use this as many times as you want. The code never expires. And as I always say, I heavily stand by BCW Supplies. Any type of sponsorship I take, I absolutely stand behind it. And I always say roughly about 90% of my supplies that I use are indeed BCW. So if you guys are looking to get some supplies to save a little money, journos. But now let's get into the top 3 books on this list. Next up we have, Amazing Spider-Man 50. First appearance of the Kingpin with such an iconic cover as well. All right, let's look at these numbers and then I'm going to go on my rant about this book. Current CGC 8.0 fair market value $3,900. 3 years ago, $1,120. That is a 248% increase in value. Absolutely crazy. Average raw, $687. This is one where I had posted some months back on Facebook Marketplace inquiring for a low-grade copy of this. Somebody hit me up and was offering $300 for a copy. Definitely low grade. I think there was a cutout, and I think the top staple was detached or something like that. I don't even know if there was a cutout, but there was a couple little things that I was like, I'm gonna hold off. I really wish I picked that book up because this book has been going mad. And look, I'm not gonna say anything, but there's a lot of spec possibilities that's going to drive this book up even more, at least for the short term. Then we may see some ebb and flow, but Silver Age Spider-Man books, even run fillers at this point, are just becoming that. It's that run. It is that Grail run for Marvel. So this book, even with short-term ebb and flow, it's going to be those ones. I think it's rare when you think about villain appearances as blue chip keys. But when you get into those early Silver Age ones, you can absolutely say that, especially with Spider-Man, in those early books. I definitely think they're all blue chip keys, even up to issue 14 with the Green Goblin's first appearance. I think this is one too. I absolutely think this is a blue chip key, and it's going to keep on going. One day, I will own this book. I will, I promise you all. And I hope if you guys are on the hunt for it too, that you will too. So that's all I'm going to say now. We're going to move on. Next up is Wonder Woman 204, the first appearance of Nubia. Now, these last 2 books were on my list last year, including this one. Now, let's look at these numbers and I'll talk about it, because this book is interesting for me, and a lot of people may be, well, why this book? Why Nubia? Current CGC 8.5 fair market value sitting at about $510. 3 years ago, $129. That's a 295% increase, almost 4 times in value. $270 average raw. All right, why Nubia? First off, I'm a huge Wonder Woman fan. Nubia, though, is a character that, look, is just a personal favorite in terms of interest for me. But look, DC has a lot of properties right now, meaning comic book characters, that they can bring out and roll out into live action. If Warner Brothers ever gets their act together and they can really make hits with. So look at what I was saying about those couple other DC books that were on this list. They were only like up, 40 to 50% over the last 3 years, which is solid. But we're doing a lot of this moving on the market, DC that is, without this movie hype. This is why I think it's a good time to seek out DC books. Because if DC ever pulls in a fan base with their live action, whether it's TV shows or movies, and they can get this connected universe really rolling. I mean, it's been 8 years now, and it's just more so than not has left the bad taste in a lot of people's mouths and disappointed. If they get it rolling, you could come back to a lot of these books and really see some speculative impact like you've seen with Marvel books with the MCU. Now, this book right here is one that's been moving a lot. I know DC is really bringing this character to light in their modern books right now, and there is a lot of opportunity with the Wonder Woman franchise that, even though Wonder Woman 84 was a bit disappointing in my opinion, we can see that continuing to be a solid foundation to where the DCEU can start doing things right. So I don't know. We may see a Nubia in a third Wonder Woman film. We know that there's going to be a third Wonder Woman film. But this is one of those books that has more of a short-term speculation value, but still that long-term goodness. This is where I would be cautious and where I'm cautious right now in buying it for myself. I don't know how much of this 295% increase over the last few years has been due to the Wonder Woman, DCEU Warner Brothers franchise. But it could be to where we could see some ebb and flow with this book before we see those long-term increases. So I personally have been cautious. All right. We have one more on the list today, folks. What could it be? What could it be? Here we go. It is Tomb of Dracula #1. First appearance of Dracula in Van Helsing. Obviously, Marvel versions. Now, this book is #1 simply because of what it's doing on the market. It's not because I want this book more than any others on this list. I mean, if I had a personal favorite that I wanted more than any, it would be Amazing Spider-Man #50. But this book, look at these numbers. Current CGC 8.5 fair market value, $925 roughly. 3 years ago, $160. That is a 478% increase in value, with an average raw sitting at $345. Absolute wow, folks. So I've told this story before. I've never really been into horror too much, like horror genre of movies and in comic books, but as of late, as of the last few years, I've really changed my tone, and I really wish this was a book that I got a long time ago, because obviously look at what it's been doing on the market. This is a book that I think has had a lot of success, not because of MCU or anything like that, but simply because of how popular the horror genre has been within comic books. And I think you have indies to thank for that. I think what indies have done, going all the way back to, Robert Kirkman with The Walking Dead, they have really said, this is a genre that we can do well with comic books. And it's continued to soar. And I think that love for the horror genre in comic books is translated over to some classic horror stuff, and leading into the Bronze Age with some solid Marvel and DC stuff. So when you look at this book, it's an absolute key. But I do believe there's a lot of spec possibility here as well. We know that Blade's coming. We know that Blade is coming. We know that the horror genre and the horror side of the MCU is coming as well. I think we are going to see Dracula hands down. My opinion, That's just my opinion. So happy to see this book doing big things. We shall see what it does in the near future. So this is my list, folks, for 2022. I know throughout the year I'm going to have a ton more books that you guys can invest in. I'll probably do some revamp books of key books for under $50 or under $100, maybe even under 500. And then I like to mix up affordable books from the Bronze Age, from Copper Age, and Silver Age. And I'll be rolling out a lot of those over the next coming years. But these are the books that I'm going to look out for, the big heavy hitters. Let's see if going through this year that I can check off some of these off of my list. So everyone, thank you so much for watching. I want to know your thoughts below. I want to know if you are going to be picking up any of these books this year, how many that you already own in your collection, or if there is any that you thought you would add to this list. Before we go, though, as always, I got to give a big shout out to all of my channel members, starting off with my Patreon channel members. If you all are interested in supporting the channel via Patreon, it's only $3.99 a month, and you do get extra perks. And, you obviously help support the channel. So a big shout out to all of my monthly supporters. I really appreciate you all so much. You guys hear me say it week after week. But also to my YouTube channel members, that is only $1.99 per month. And you guys can join by clicking that join button below as well. So again, thank you all so much. But to all of my viewers and subscribers, thank you for watching. Be well, and until next time.